Hello, everybody. My name is Hearth Moon Rising. I am a Dianic priestess and the author of 2 books on animal magic. I have been practicing and teaching a nature-based witchcraft for over 30 years. Today, I am speaking with you from the Adirondack Mountains in upstate New York. I am going to begin today with a prayer. I will say the prayer in Muncie, Delaware, and then in English. Anishik patamawas elamocha walakamek. Anishik wemakwak wulatol patwayang. Wemamitkwak mihaskwal oala shoshak wak awayayasak. Anishik elamiliang ato. Anishik elawema owanik mawalatit yotali. Batmawana elanaktaken lakamak tach pelewaken. Nashaka anishik kishalamokwang. Thank you, Creator, for this beautiful day. Thank you for all the beautiful things you have brought us, all the trees, grasses, birds, and animals. Thank you for giving us the deer. Thank you for gathering us together here today. We are praying for another day of enlightenment. The greatest thank you to you, Creator. Kwaimet Shimgish Patamawa, Anushik. Now I am done praying. Thank you. The title of this session is Staring Back at the Deer. Perhaps you have had the experience of sensing a set of eyes upon you, looked around, and discovered a deer blending into the landscape, stock still, gazing at you. Today we will move into the space where the awareness of the deer and the awareness of humans intersect in order to draw more meaning from deer encounters. This talk will be based on my books, Invoking Animal Magic, A Guide for the Pagan Priestess, and Divining with Animal Guides, Answers from the World at Hand. The focus of Invoking Animal Magic is on meditation and inner journeys. Divining with Animal Guides focuses on interpreting signs in nature. I have a whole chapter in this book about the deer. Most of the pictures in this slideshow are not mine. I take terrible pictures of wildlife. I don't have a camera for it. This is a picture I took in early May, and there are 2 deer in this picture, but even I have trouble finding them. Most of the pictures here are by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and a few from Wikimedia Commons. An encounter with a deer can take many forms. Some of your encounters with a deer may be like this one, seeing a real deer out in nature. But there are other interactions or messages with a deer that count as deer signs. This is one of the most common signs of the deer that many urban people have. And this counts as a deer interaction. This is Santa Parade from Toronto, with Rudolph in the front and the other reindeer. Another deer message can come from signs in nature that a deer has been in the area. You might see some deer browse. This is called deer browse here. a shrub that a deer has obviously been eating, or you might see footprints, tracks of deer. And this is also a message from the deer. Here's a picture I took from a place called Deer Leap, overlooking Lake George. And this counts as a deer sign if you find yourself in a place that is named after the deer. And the word leap in the name of this place, Deer Leap, is also significant. When you encounter a deer message, you want to pay attention to the context that the encounter appears. So the word leap in Deer Leap is significant. It's also significant how many deer there are that appear to you. You also want to notice what the deer is doing, whether it's standing still or running away from you, whether it's a male or female deer, the type of deer. This is a piebald white-tailed buck. If an animal shows you all four sides during an encounter, that's a sign that this message is significant and you want to pay a lot of attention to it. After looking at the context in which the message appears, when interpreting the message, you want to first look at your own personal associations with the animal. Many people associate deer with gentleness, with magic, with beauty. So you want to look at what the deer means to you. Some people also see deer as emblematic of innocence. Deer and human interactions are not always positive. So if you have ambivalent feelings about the deer, those are relevant too, or they may be relevant. This picture is of a mule deer with the Denver skyline in the background. As deer have become more prevalent, there is more interactions between deer and people that are not positive. The farmer in my village calls deer giant rodents because they get into his garden. He does not have any ambivalent feelings about the deer. He doesn't like them. Deer can also be associated with Lyme disease because they are vectors of Lyme disease through the ticks that they carry. And deer can be dangerous. A lot of people die every year by hitting deer with the car. In this picture, we have a gravestone with a little deer in the background. It's kind of hard to see. Deer can literally bring people into the spirit realm. After you've looked at your personal associations with the deer, you want to move into examining the beliefs within your own culture about deer. In Celtic mythology, the deer is an emissary between the living and the non-living. In art, deer are often depicted as go-betweens in different states of reality. Here we have a painting by Moonbook's author Imelda Almqvist showing the reindeer mother birthing from the spirit world into the material. One of the most well-known deer goddesses is Diana, known to the Greeks as Artemis. Here's a statue of her with the Carinian hind. This is often mistaken as a stag, but her familiar is actually a female reindeer. Reindeer, of course, have horns. Female reindeer have horns, and they keep their horns most of the year. They shed them in the spring. This is a cave painting of a deer. Up until a few thousand years ago, deer were in more southern latitudes. And a lot of cave paintings are of reindeer. In the Greek legend of Hercules, the third labor of Hercules was to catch the Carinian hind, the familiar of Artemis. And this is really a shamanic journey into an initiation into deer magic. A white deer is often seen as a symbol of the moon goddess. Here we have an albino white-tailed deer. I find it interesting that even though deer are often seen as emissaries from the spirit realm, they have been extremely important in human history in a material sense. Right here we have caribou antlers, and antlers were once used in farming and planting. Here is also my little hand rake that I use for planting instead of deer antlers today. Here is a comb that is made out of an antler. This is from Denmark from the 2nd century BCE. After looking at how a deer is portrayed in your culture and your personal associations with deer, you might want to do some research into natural sciences and the life cycle of the deer. This is a picture of a key deer, which is one of the smallest deer in the world. The key deer are indigenous to the islands of the Florida Keys. And one of the things that is interesting about this deer is that it has no natural predators. Nobody hunts the key deer, not even humans anymore, because they're a protected species. And it's interesting that this deer is still very shy. It's as shy as any other deer, even though it has no natural predators. There's a story from Delaware Indian legend about why the deer is so shy. And it has to do with the caretaker of the deer who rides on the back of a buck and takes care of all of the animals. The story goes that there was a hunter who bragged a lot about his hunting ability to the point where he began saying that he was even more powerful than the caretaker of the animals. And so the caretaker decided to intervene, and he got one of the little people to herd the deer away from people. And that is why deer are so shy. so that people do not become too arrogant about their hunting ability or about their ability to interact with the deer. So that is how I suggest approaching an interaction with an animal. To look at the context in which the encounter appears, to look at your own associations with the animal, and then to look at the symbolism of the animal within your own culture. After that, you may decide to do some research into natural sciences to see what you can learn from biology. And I have no objections to looking outside of your culture for interpretations of an animal encounter. I just don't recommend making it a reflexive move. I think it's important to acknowledge where you're coming from first before moving into the realm of research. Okay, so I want you to put yourself in this picture and notice what might be relevant to interpreting the message that might be coming from this deer interaction. It's hard to see from the screen, but I've blown up this picture, and this little animal here that this fawn is looking at is a bunny. So look at this picture and just notice what is relevant here for interpreting the message of this deer encounter. Okay, and I want to mention again that there is a chapter on the deer in my book, Divining with Animal Guides, and I have a lot more folklore in this book. You can find more information about the deer and excerpts from my books on my website, hearthmoonrising.com. And you can also follow me on Facebook and Twitter, where I frequently post pictures of animals. I am going to open up to questions now. Okay. How do I know if the deer is bringing a message to me? I think that if you have an interaction with the deer, it is always a message for you. If you are in a group, it might be a message that pertains to the whole group as an entity, but any interaction with the deer is always a message. Thank you. Does it make a difference if my encounter with a deer is in a dream or in real life? No, it doesn't. It doesn't. If you encounter a deer in a dream, it's a good idea to write it down so that you can remember right away the context, how many deer you saw in your dream, whether the deer spoke to you, whether it showed all four sides to you, that sort of thing. But an encounter with a deer in a vision, in a dream, in real life, it's all the same. How do I decide which interpretation of a deer encounter is correct, since there are many interpretations out there? This is one of the reasons I developed a system, a set of steps for interpreting an animal encounter, because I don't recommend going to canned explanations in books immediately to interpret your encounter. Again, I think it's important to look at the context, because a book is not going to show you necessarily, a book of meanings, I mean, it's not going to necessarily show you what it means that the deer was standing still and wasn't frightened of you in this encounter, or what it means that there were 5 deer in your encounter. Now, my book, Divining with Animal Guides, I talk about the meaning, the symbolism of color and of numbers and of a lot of different contexts. So after reading my book, you would be able to put together the various symbols and come up with a unique interpretation of that particular encounter. But again, you want to look at the context in which the encounter occurs, then look at your own personal associations, move into the cultural meanings of the deer within your own culture, and then if you still are confused or want more information, then do some research into science and into other cultures. And if you are still unsure after all of that, what I do is I pray for another sign. And I always get it. How do I increase my chances of seeing a deer? I'm asked this question a lot, and I think it's, in some ways, it's kind of amusing to me. I live in a very wild place. I live in the Adirondack Mountains, and I pray not to see a deer many times, especially when I'm driving. And when I do see a deer in the woods, of course, it's a blessing, and it's a wonderful, wonderful experience. And I know that for many people, especially if you live in the city, seeing a deer in the wild is just a wonderful and rare opportunity. You're more likely to see a deer in the summer months around sunrise, and in the winter in late afternoon. And they like golf courses for some reason. I always see them in golf courses. You're more likely to see them in places that are open with open grass. Although I saw a deer last week in the forest, and it was very interesting. It surprised me. I was going along the path along the stream, and just went from the stream and went right up very close to me, and we were both surprised. And I had my camera with me, but I didn't reach for it. I was kind of cautious with it because they are really big animals. And when you surprise one and you're up really close to it, you are very aware that, you don't want to alarm the deer. I have had deer get aggressive before. And many people will tell stories of deer becoming aggressive. You always, if you do see a deer, if you're going to get close to it, you want to get close to it in a way that it has a room to run away. You never want to corner a deer. What kind of spells would I use with deer magic? I did a spell one time with a deer to get an insurance company to pay me. That there was an insurance company that owed me money and they were not paying. And the name of the insurance company was the Hartford Insurance Company. And a heart is another word for a deer. So I spoke to the deer people and did some ritual asking them to get this insurance company that had their name on it to pay me the money that they owed me. And I did get them. I did get my money after that. Deer are often used in spells for beauty, for psychic ability, for vision. If you really have trouble with your shamanic journeying, your meditative journeying, you might want to court a relationship with a deer to increase your psychic ability. What kind of healing energy does the deer bring? Deer are often used in spells for eyesight because they have such a broad field of vision. They're also used in spells for trauma, for healing trauma. And any horned animal is used in spells for male virility. I would also say that deer would be beneficial to use in spells to combat diseases that are associated with deer, especially Lyme disease. So those are just a few ideas. I'm sure there are many other contexts where you would use deer energy for healing. Is there a difference in the magical energy between a female deer and a stag? Sometimes there might be. There might be and there might not be. Of course, you don't know a lot of times if you're looking at a female deer or a stag, or at least I don't, because the deer is too young or it's the wrong time of year for them to have antlers. But when you run into a pregnant animal, that is a great sign that you're birthing something. I love running into pregnant animals in the wild. There was one time when I had this interaction with a muskrat that was pregnant, and she was trying to get up a riverbank, and she kept falling back down because she was so fat. She was so pregnant that she couldn't reach the top of the riverbank. And eventually she did get out of it, but it was so special to watch her trying to scurry up the riverbank while she had this fat belly. So yeah, if you see a female deer and you can tell it, you're close enough to tell it's pregnant, then that's a sign. A stag, again, a stag might be a sign of a male deer guardian. So, and I also will see a stag as an emblem of Diana, because where I live, there aren't any reindeer. So when I see a stag with a very big rack, I see it as a sign from Diana. Well, thank you everyone for for coming to my talk. I have enjoyed giving it, and I look forward to seeing you again.